Light on Global News Prime. Federal Capital Territory APC Congress crisis deepens as aggrieved candidates reject results. In business, President Tinubu approved $75 million investment in Futterwave. And on the foreign scene, Beijing moves short work permit applications online from May 2026. In sports stories, Nigerian Tigers appoint Boateng as assistant coach. Hello and welcome to all our viewers in Nigeria and around the world to News Prime on Global Television, coming to you live from the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Jumai Manson. A quick reminder that Global Television is on DSTV channel 365 and Star Times channel 276. Now the news in full. Fresh cracks have emerged within the ruling All Progressive Congress in the Federal Capital Territory as aggrieved candidates reject the outcome of the recently conducted FCT Congress, describing the process as flawed and unacceptable. Political correspondent Ubong Usoro reports.
This comes amid growing concerns over internal democracy within the party, following allegations of manipulation and imposition of candidates during the Congress exercise in parts of the FCT. Honorable Hal Hassan Aske condemned the exercise, insisting that the outcome lacks credibility and fails to represent the voice of genuine party faithfuls.
There was no any Congress consensus or consideration in the FCT. We are party people and we will not allow our party to be treated anyhow. We want to maintain democracy in Nigeria and the system. We are saying that internal democracy must be respected, because if we were allowed the democracy to be maltreated anyhow, that would not give us what we want in Nigeria.
He described the Congress as a scripted charade, alleging that the process was compromised and did not reflect the will of party members. Hal Hassan Aske warned that continued disregard for due process could weaken the APC's party structure in the FCT and erode confidence of loyal members.
What we are saying is that we are telling the party and all those that has hand that they should do the right thing if they need us in the APC. But if they don't need us, we know how to play the game. If they the games of politics, exactly. If they don't need us, they should let us know and they should not take action in time.
He further stated that unless the party leadership addresses their concerns and tenders a public apology, aggrieved members may be left with no other option but to consider their political future within another party. Ubong Usoro for Global TV News.
The People's Democratic Party, PDP, says it is committed to conducting transparent, credible and inclusive primaries at all levels in line with democratic best practices. The party's substantive national chairman, Abdurrahman Mohammed, made this known at the 108th NEC meeting in Abuja. Zaram Nasri was there for Global Television News.
It was a gathering of PDP stakeholders and party members across the nation, gathered to discuss key issues concerning the party, which includes progress recorded within the last convention. Welcoming the participants, the substantive national chairman of the party, Abdurrahman Mohammed, said the PDP is determined to produce candidates that will suit the aspirations of the Nigerian people.
On this, we must also at this moment acknowledge with sincere gratitude the professionalism and vigilance of our national security agencies, whose timely intervention and continue to protect the property asset ensure stability at a crucial juncture. Their role in safeguarding democratic institutions remain vital, and we commend their adherence to a constitutional responsibility during the sensitive period.
The chairman emphasized that the meeting is pivotal as it is expected to produce key decisions and strategic directions that will define the party's next phase.
Have not only preserved the soul of our party, but have also repositioned us for a stronger and more prosperous future.
The 108 NEC meeting was also attended by the national leader and the FCT Minister Wike, who restated his commitment in supporting the party, for which he is a member since 1999. Zahra Nasr, Global TV News.
Meanwhile, the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, has called on members of the People's Democratic Party to close rank and move beyond internal division. Wike made the strong call for reconciliation within the party 108th of the National Executive Committee meeting. Ubong Usoro has the details.
The Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, advised the newly inaugurated leadership to sustain ongoing reconciliation efforts, stressing the need to actively engage aggrieved members and those who have defected from the party. Wike assured that justice, fairness and equity would guide the party's decision, emphasizing that every member would be duly recognized and treated accordingly. He also reaffirmed his loyalty to the PDP, pledging continued support despite existing challenges.
I thank God, by the grace of God, we have had a period of crisis. Now we are together to make sure this party moves forward. I want to commend all of you, the leaders who throughout this period still remain faithful and committed in spite of all temptations for you to have abandoned your party. Said no, that you continue to be here. I want to thank all of you.
Also lending his voice, the Senate Minority Leader Abba Moro called on former members and those who've left the party to return, assuring them that the PDP remains open and inclusive. He pointed to the party's recent e-registration exercise as evidence of its strength, noting that the PDP still maintains its position as Nigeria's leading opposition party.
The crisis that had engulfed the PDP over time is over. And I particularly want to acknowledge and thank the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory for his efforts in bringing the PDP this far.
The 108th NEC meeting comes at a crucial time as the party intensify efforts to rebuild unity, restore confidence among members, and reposition itself ahead of future electoral contests. Ubong Usoro, Global TV News.
Tension rose in Abuja as retired officers of the Nigerian police force took their grievances to the doorstep of power, blocking access to presidential villa in a desperate push for justice. They are calling on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to immediately sign the police exit bill into law, warning that years of neglect under the pension system have left many of them in hardship. Kikelomo Okere has the details.
It was a scene charged with emotion and frustration as elderly, worn out but determined retired police officers gathered at the gate of the presidential villa in Abuja. Men who once stood on the front line of the national security now say they have been abandoned, left to struggle under a pension system they described as harsh and unforgiving. Under the umbrella of the Police Retired Officers Forum of Nigeria, the protesters demand an end to the contributory pension scheme, insisting it has failed to meet their basic needs after decades of service.
When we say villa, this is the highest position claimant in Nigeria. This is where, when they try a case, no appeal. So that is why we felt it necessary to come to this villa and beg the executive president of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to fast-track signing of our pension.
Let me tell you, except the president feels the problem of police, internal security problem will continue to increase unabated.
For these retirees, the delay is more than administrative. Many says they can no longer afford food, healthcare or shelter, despite dedicating over 30 years of serving the nation. They argue that while other security agencies have been removed from the pension scheme, police officers have remained, deepening what they see as inequality and injustice within the system.
We wait for 30 days to see whether the president is going to assign our bill. He didn't assign. That is why we call here to tell him that we want him to use his good office, as we know him, to sign and exit us from contributing pension scheme.
We are not fighting for any other thing than our rights. You should give us our rights, because the suffering has come back to we women. Our men retire, nothing to show for it. Yes. Most of them, look at, immediately they retire 1 month, 2 months, they have become a thing of pity.
The protest is the latest in growing wave of agitation as retired personnel intensify pressure on the federal government to act, warning that continued silence could further erode morale within the force. For these former officers, the battle is no longer on the street, but for dignity, survival, and recognition after service. Kike Lomo Okeri, Global TV News.
The federal government has opened applications for the 2025-2026 in-country scholarship scheme for engineering and related disciplines in Nigerian universities. And the program, administered by the Petroleum Technology Development Fund, is scheduled to close on May 29, 2026. The scheme targets undergraduate and postgraduate students in oil and gas-related fields as part of efforts to build local capacity and strengthen technical expertise within Nigeria. Overall, the federal government has earmarked 1.371 billion naira in the 2026 appropriation bill for the prosecution of Boko Haram, terrorism, and related cases under the Federal Ministry of Justice, representing a sharp increase from the 530 million naira approved for similar cases in 2025. The 2026 provision was drawn from the appropriation bill, as the Budget Office of the Federation had yet to release the detailed breakdown of the 2026 budget recently signed by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Tinubu on Friday signed the 2026 appropriation bill into law, approving a total budget of 68.32 trillion naira for the fiscal year. The budget includes 5.41 trillion naira for defense and security, reflecting the government's continued focus on tackling insecurity. Meanwhile, Boko Haram terrorist group has released a video daring the Nigerian government to attempt a forceful rescue of 416 abducted victims in Borno State. This is as it warned that if its demands are not met within 72 hours, the victims will be taken to different locations where they may never be seen again. The terrorists, dressed in military camouflage, stated that they are battle ready if the government chooses to force instead of meeting their demands. Armed bandits have reportedly attacked Kamaji village in Kiama, local government area of Kwara State, killing scores of people. According to security sources who confirmed the development, the attack, which also claimed some soldiers' lives, occurred at about early morning hours. Reports said that security agents comprising the Nigerian Army and local vigilantes engaged the bandits in an intense gun battle, as few soldiers were killed during the attack, though the full extent of the damage caused by the attack could not be ascertained as of the time of filing this report. Troops of Operation Hadi K has carried out a clearance operation targeting suspected insurgent enclaves in Kaga local government area of Borno State. The development was disclosed in a post by security analyst and counter-insurgency expert Zagazola Mekama via his X-handle. Security sources said the operation was conducted by troops of 21 Task Force Brigade in conjunction with members of the Civilian Joint Task Force, CJTF. Meanwhile, troops of Operation Hadi K have arrested 5 suspected smugglers and recovered assorted items during an operation along the border communities of Borno and Yobe State. A counterinsurgency and security expert in Lake Chad region, Zagazola Mikama, made this known in a statement posted on X. Mikama disclosed that the suspects were intercepted by troops of 27 Task Force Brigade in conjunction with members of the Civilian Joint Task Force. Forward now to the National Youth Service Corps has announced a change in the orientation schedule for prospective Corps members deployed to Enugu and Osun State for the 2026 Batch A Scheme 2 exercise. In a statement issued by the NYSC Director of Information and Public Relations, Caroline Embu, the scheme said the orientation course for the two states would now commence on Tuesday, April 28, 2026 and end on Monday, May 18, 2026. It urged affected prospective Corps members to take note of the reverse date and comply accordingly. You are watching the live broadcast of News Prime. News Prime continues after this weather forecast, plus business, foreign and sports stories on the other side of this break. Please stay with us.
Glad you could join us. There's dust in the forecast. So going into Tuesday, dust lifted from our source region is expected to create a hazy, dry conditions across parts of the northeast, particularly Yobe, Borno, Adamawa, and Gombe State. Elsewhere across the country, weather conditions will remain relatively stable. The southern areas will see mostly cloudy skies, while other regions can expect mostly sunny conditions with few patches of cloud. There is a chance of afternoon rainfall, especially along the coastal region where thunderstorms are likely. The storms may extend into inland areas, affecting much of the southwest and reaching parts of Anambra, Enugu, Imo, Abia, and also parts of Kogi State. And that's the latest weather update for Tuesday. Do join us again. I am Akemi Samarda.
You're welcome back, and if you're just tuning in, this is News Prime on Global Television. Thank you for staying with us. In business now, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has approved a $75 million investment in Flutterwave as the fintech company advances plan for its initial public offering IPO. Development was disclosed by the President's Special Assistant, Dada Olusegun, via social media post. The move comes shortly after Flutterwave secured approval to operate banking services in Nigeria, marking a significant expansion of its operations. The federal government has tasked the 7 regional development commissions with the need for economic diversification and self-sufficiency across the regions. This was contained in a communique released by the head of Information and Public Relations, Sani Datti, after a 2-day retreat by the Ministry of Regional Development in collaboration with the Regional Development Commissions in Benin City, Edo State. According to the communique, the federal government also used the retreat to set a decisive course for accelerated regional development. The Nigerian naira has gone slightly weaker across foreign exchange markets, reflecting continued demand for the US dollar. At the official Nigerian foreign exchange market window, the currency traded at about 1,347 naira to the dollar, a minor depreciation from last week's close despite stable liquidity conditions. And the powered market rate hovered around 1,395 to 1,405 naira per dollar in major cities, with the gap between official and informal markets remaining relatively stable. On the foreign news now, the Beijing government has announced that all applications for short-term work permits and commuter permits will transition to a fully digital system from May 1st, 2026, marking a significant shift in how employers process foreign workers' documentation. Authorities say the move is aimed at improving efficiency, reducing administrative errors, and eliminating issues tied to lost or incomplete email submissions. Under the new directive, employers and their authorized representatives will be required to submit applications exclusively through the country's official online portal, replacing the long-standing email-based system. Bulgaria's former president, Rumen Radev, says the country's future is at stake after casting his vote in the nation's 8th legislative election in 5 years. Radev's Progressive Bulgarians grouping is tipped to win on a pledge to fight corruption after an anti-graft movement triggered a long political crisis in the European Union's poorest member. Zara Nasser tells us more.
Radev, a European Union critic who has called for renewing ties with Russia, took an absolute majority in parliamentary elections that could spell an end to the country's half-decade of political uncertainty, as shown by near-complete vote results on Monday. The European Union's poorest member has experienced 8 votes since 2021, when anti-graft rallies brought down the conservative administration of longtime pro-European leader Boyko Borisov. Radev expresses concerns about the electoral process and its outcome shortly after casting his vote.
So publishing that, communicating that, and building trust, accepting when things go wrong, because sometimes reforms do have unintended consequences, especially when you don't carry everybody along, especially the users of the reform, the private sector. And then having the courage and the conviction to push through the political will, particularly from the top, like for instance with Nigeria, our president really had a lot of courage to remove the subsidies that had been a challenge for a long time, and central bank governors, so those are on the macro level, and then even with regulations and deregulation, working with the National Assembly, making sure that the last thing will just be like sustainability, making sure that you take regulations into legislation to anchor them so that they can transcend particular administrations, and then making sure that because we're a federation, you also take the subnational level along.
We're a larger firm. If you tell us what the rules are, we'll structure for the rules. If the rules aren't great and they're bad, well, that's what they are, but we'll meet them.
Radev, 62, who resigned earlier this year after 9 years as president, ran in Sunday's vote on a pledge to fight corruption, bringing together a wide spectrum of voters, with the turnout the highest since 2021. Radev's Progressive Bulgaria grouping secured.
Over now to United States. President Donald Trump has denied claims that Israel influenced the United States' decision to go to war with Iran, insisting the action was driven by his long-standing stance against Iran acquiring nuclear weapons. The remarks came amid mounting criticisms, with opponents arguing the conflict was unnecessary and driven by foreign interests. U.S. intelligence officials have also stated there is no evidence Iran was actively building a nuclear weapon. The war has triggered economic fallout, with Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz pushing up global oil prices and driving fuel costs above $4 per gallon in the U.S. In sports news now, the Nathaniel Ido Ajengule Under-14 Football League ended in style at Orege with a Super 4 finale that delivered excitement and a festival atmosphere for grassroots football. Fortune FA powered into the final after a dominant win over Pure Talent FA, with Adebayo Lateef scoring a first-half hat-trick and Odeshola Ogunayo adding 2 goals. In the second semi-final, Strong Dove FA edged a goalless contest 4-2 on penalties to book their place in the final. Stanley Boateng has been appointed assistant coach of Nigeria's senior women's national football team, the Tigers. Boateng will join the Tigers coaching crew led by Rena Wakama. The African champions are already in the United States of America for a training tour ahead of the 2026 FIBA Women's World Cup. Super Eagles captain Winifred Ndidi has returned to full training at Breastres. Ndidi sustained a hamstring injury in Breastres' away defeat at the Femblac last month. Defensive midfielder was pictured in training with his teammates ahead of their match against Anspor in the quarter-final of the Turkish Cup on Thursday. And that's it on News Prime. Here is a recap of our top stories again. Brought to you that fresh cracks have emerged within the ruling All Progressive Congress in the Federal Capital Territory as aggressive candidates reject the outcome of the recently conducted FCT Congress, describing the process as flawed and unacceptable. In business, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has approved a $75 million investment in Flutterwave as the fintech company advances plans for its initial public offering IPO. And on the foreign news, the Beijing government has announced that all applications for short-term work permits and commuter permits will transition to a fully digital system from May 1st, 2026, marking a significant shift in how employees process foreign workers' documentations. And finally, in sports, Stanley Boateng has been appointed assistant coach of Nigeria's senior women's national basketball team, the Tigers. Now, a quick reminder that Global TV is on DSTV channel 365 and Star Times channel 276. Now, kindly follow us across all social media platforms now showing on your screen by using @Global TV NG. I am Jumai Manson. Thank you for watching.